Welcome to the stillness. Welcome to giving yourself permission to discover that space and make time for it in your busy schedule. We'll start with 3 inhales here, just 3 rounds of breath, inviting ourselves into our body. So begin with your first inhale here, intentional inhale. Taking that through the nose, allowing the shoulders to drop as you begin to feel the chest expand. Allowing your body to slow down. And softly exhaling here. Inhaling again, meeting yourself exactly where you are. Noticing what is going on in your mind. Just noticing, not following it in. Exhaling softly. For that last one, inhale here again. Allow yourself to just be exactly where you are today. And then softly exhale. When you're ready, the goal is to create simplicity. So this in itself is a very, very simple practice. As we move into the practice now, notice if there's a way you can commit to stillness. As the mind begins to clear out and slow down, the body sometimes will resist to it. So by just committing to some stillness, you can notice what the thoughts actually are, rather than allowing them to escape through physical movement. So the outcome of life is not governed by passion, but by principle. I want you to notice as you sit here, when you schedule your day, when you work on what it is that you are going to do next, what do you gravitate towards? And a lot of times we are craving passion over principle. So rather than structure, we want to wander off like children that want sugar. It's sweet, and we want a lot of it, and it tastes good, and it makes us feel good. But not always is it the best thing to build a diet out of. So when we understand, when we're looking for happiness and contentment, which sometimes we mix and confuse with passion, it's good to notice what comes up for you in that moment. So with principle is more attached to patterns and structure. And it puts more of a plan in place, a security. And that could be a physical security or an emotional security. But when we step into our day with a bit of structure, the passion in itself will show up automatically. The same way, if you prep a good meal, rather than reaching for something that's not as nutritious, the nutrition will pay off. It will give you the support you need. And then what ends up happening is you get to experience the sense of pleasure completely, rather than it just being passion. So we're going to just dive into a little bit of how our emotions work and what is going on internally. And by doing this, what it does is it really helps us, gives us the tools we need to go out into our day and really begin to detect what is actually going on. So yesterday, in the restorative, I brought up the concept of instinct versus feelings and what are the differences. So I listed a couple of them, but I'm going to bring them up in here because it's really relevant with the differences of principle and passion. So your instinct is a gut instinct. I talk about it in an interior designer. It's like the second brain. It's there as an intuition. But what it is it's an automatic response. It's a present response. When we're feeling something, it's something that is almost attached to something else. It's connected to thoughts. It is something that manifested. It's like saying, I have a fear of heights. So you could be standing, on a really high mountain, watching this beautiful scenery, or just on a building, looking down, and you could be like, okay, I'm really scared of heights. And that could be, I have a feeling that I'm scared, right? The instinct would be, if you were like bungee jumping, if you have that fear, or skydiving, that your instinct would tell you not to go there. But it's not your feeling, it's an instinct. So your instinct is more of a response. It's an intuition in the moment. And what we were doing a little bit of yesterday is trying to separate the two. So I invite you to take a moment here. I'm inhaling deeply into your body, and just notice if you can tell the difference between what thoughts and feelings might be and what an instinct might feel like. Notice the difference between the two by thinking about the last time you listened to your intuition, that instinct, or you ignored it. In Hebrew, they almost like, I think it could be attached to like the Bina Yisera. And with women, we have it ingrained in us really, really deeply. So notice the difference between when you had that instinct and what your response to it was. The more we work on being present in our day, and the more we work on being in the moment, the easier it is to access this natural intuition that is there and as a response in the present, then build up concepts around how we feel and rely on that to protect us, or narrate whatever it does, or dictate back to principle to dictate the principle itself. So we're going to go a little bit deeper here. And the thing is when we step into the I want, this desire of need, of this desire of dreaming, it's really, really difficult to be present. A lot of the wants we have is almost a little reminder to us that we actually aren't in the present. Now, obviously, there's, again, back to principle, there's the structure that we build around like a journey that we're creating for ourselves. But for a lot of us, we'll spend a lot of time dreaming about something we want or somewhere else that we want to be in, anywhere but exactly where we are, and that is in our body. When we choose to be in the now, we say, I choose to be here, right now. Creating the simplicity of the now, uncomplicating the experience itself, quieting the noise and the feet that just want to run, and bringing yourself back into this space. So we are so solution-oriented. We are so problem-oriented. So much of the way we explore life is through problem and solution, which in theory is just explanation. There's a lot of explaining going on. And a lot of that comes from, if it's you explaining something to yourself, if it's explaining why something would happen, how it would happen, if it would happen. There's a lot of conversation, a lot of words going on. But the body doesn't understand English or any other language. It understands movement. That instinct also, that intuition also doesn't really understand words. It picks up on how your body navigates itself when it's completely comfortable or completely afraid. And it will say to you, yes or no, depending on the body language that is being communicated. So when we begin to invite stillness into this experience, what we're doing is we're beginning to pay attention to what happens naturally. What is going on outside of words themselves? And sometimes with less words, less explanation, we will be able to pinpoint what actually is going on. A lot of that comes from a space of feeling like we're safe. Safe in our own body. And then feeling safe in our own body comes with taking care of our body, including the mind, the body, and the soul as one, as a unit. Even though there are different components, bringing them together and simplifying. Telling yourself you don't need to explain yourself. And by tapping into that inner experience, the more silent experience, you'll be able to tap into the instinct more often than not. And it will be available and supportive to you in the moment rather than planning scenarios or planning defenses for unnecessary experiences. So the instinct in itself is a principle of committing to being completely present. And when we do that, when we begin to notice, what ends up happening is we begin to understand that thoughts come and go. Feelings come and go. And sometimes they can be random. When we have negative responses, it's usually when we identify the thoughts or feelings that the actual shift happens. Rather than understanding that I might just be going through something, I might need some support. There's no need to explain. And the nervous system can rebalance itself. The mind can quiet itself. And you can allow the instinct to be more present and more of the focal point of the experience. So by now, most of you have been up for a little while. And some of you have been up for a little less because this is a thing we do that's, worldwide. So I'm so grateful to have all of you from all over. We've all had already emotions or thoughts or feelings that have already flashed through our mind or that we've flushed through from the second that we opened our eyes. And I want you to notice if there are any that lead. If there is an emotion that, or a thought that is so strong that it literally takes over. Sometimes that happens because it's a muscle that we've built or a monster that we've fed, positively or negatively, depending on what it is. And just notice if underneath it there might be something else. If there is any resistance that usually shows up in our day, a lot of times it has to do with intuition rather than feeling, and a body response. And for all that to happen and to work accurately, it's learning about our body language, learning about how we operate in the world itself. A really simple example that I gave yesterday at the end of class was, from the way we do everything, from the way we do one thing is the way we do everything. So it's so important to build good principles, right? So recently my daughter got married and I went over to her house and she was cooking dinner and she was hunched over a garbage can peeling potatoes. And I mentioned to her, I said, it's really important to create good practices. Now she's my daughter, so she knows how I roll. And I recommended that when she peels potatoes, or any other vegetables, it's important to do it standing up straight and maybe possibly doing it on a cutting board or in the sink on the counter. Because over time, bending over the garbage is going to create back pain or a bunch of issues which can happen from hunching over, even if it's once a week. Now, at this point, she's peeling 2 potatoes, so it doesn't seem like such a big deal. But 2 potatoes becomes 4 potatoes, and then it's 6, and we know what happens. A lot of times when we start something, we're like, it's no big deal. But if we take the time to put the right structure in place, honor the principles and put the right structure in place, what happens is we're able to create an environment where feelings don't take over. For example, in that case, repeating that hunched over position over a garbage can over and over might end up with a feeling of, oh my gosh, my back really hurts. I hate peeling potatoes. Which isn't an instinct. It's a feeling, but almost like it's like a false response due to the fact of the actual structure not being put in place to begin with and not doing it right the first time. So for a lot of us, and again, this happened in my healing journey as well, we come from a place that our parents and mentors have gifted us a lot of really, really wonderful things. But then there are a lot of things that we have to realign and learn on our own and create supportive structures in the simplicity. It's in the little tasks itself that we can have a positive relationship or an accurate relationship with the way we're feeling. And then through that, be able to be present, completely present in the instinct. So let me go back to the potato thing for a second. So if you're standing completely straight, right? If you're hunched over, so just think about this for a moment. If you're hunched over, and I'm going to ask you a question, and I'm going to ask you for a response. Depending on how you're feeling in that hunched position, you are going to answer me accordingly. But if you're standing straight, 2 feet on the ground, and shoulders, dropped, and I ask you the same question, there's a sense of flow and alignment and balance. And then the response you'll be able to give me from there will be very, very different. For a lot of us, we're not just doing a task like peeling potatoes. You're also on the phone usually at the same time, or you're multitasking, right? Noticing that the way we move our body is going to tell us a lot about how we're feeling. But we can also start measuring what we're feeling, as in the accuracy of what we're feeling. And through that in itself, it's going to unfold, it's going to help us tap into the intuition in itself separately on a greater level, because it won't be masked by this mountain of false responses, which is sometimes from the emotional perspective. So for me, again, I can only talk from my experience or what I notice with others. When we are eating healthy and we are taking good care of our mind and body, even though it might feel like you're doing less by moving slower or more mindful, most of the time, it'll enhance the quality of the experience that you want to gain. And you'll be a lot more tapped into the instinct, because the busyness isn't choking you, we could say, really. Because so many of us get up in the morning and are like, I'm so busy. It's like, let your schedule be busy, but you yourself move at a slow pace. So this really creates awareness. The more silent those voices become, the less we rush into things, the easier it is going to be, the easier it will be to live in the present and trust the intuition, trust the instinct, rather than rely on a collection of feelings to support us. So thank you so much for joining me in this meditation today. I know it's a lot, but this is body work more than mind work. So just trust that your body hears exactly what it needs to hear. I am Esther Levy, and this is a Ujjayi self-care meditation. Thanks for joining.